In-depth journalism in the Memphis community, the Daily Memphian is of Memphis, not just in Memphis, and seeks to tell the stories of this city. TheDailyMemphian.com. Truth in place.
I'm Bill Dries with the Daily Memphian. We are joined by Shelby County Budget Director Michael Thompson to talk about the 2024 budget season in county government. We record this Friday, May 24th, 2024, and this is On the Record. Michael, I think we will talk at least some budget basics here for folks who maybe are into baseball season and the NBA's second season, but probably aren't aware of this thing called a budget season. So the County Commission is considering Mayor Lee Harris's budget proposal, $1.6 billion, which is a consolidated county budget. Let's start there. What does it mean to call this budget consolidated?
Well, Bill, thank you for having me today. I do want to say that we're actually preparing the FY25 budget. You mentioned 2024 in your intro, but it's the FY25 season.
Right, but because it's it's the calendar year that the fiscal year ends in.
Correct, sir. Yes, yes, correct. The $1.6 billion budget that the mayor has presented is consolidated, and I'll explain what that means. Our overall budget is comprised of various funds where expenditures are incurred. For example, we have our general fund. That's our main operating fund, primarily where all of our day-to-day operating expenses are housed. We also have an education fund. This fund captures the funding that we give to all of our school districts, municipal, and also Memphis Shelby County schools. And also has our debt service fund, where we pay for all of our capital expenditure projects. It has enterprise funds, special revenue funds, grant funds, and internal service funds. So when you take the total balances for all of those various funds I just mentioned, we come to a consolidated $1.6 billion budget. The most important fund in that, though, is the general fund, as I mentioned before, where all of our day-to-day operations are housed.
Mm-hmm. Right. And the consolidation of the consolidated budget also gets into something that is unique to county government, and that is that county government has countywide elected officials, mostly clerks, but the sheriff is one as well, who are not part of the administration because they're elected to their own countywide office, but nevertheless, their budget comes through the administration and through the commission and is part of that budget as well, right?
Correct. That is correct. Those are charter officers, and all charter officers submit the budget to the mayor. He works really hard and diligent to include as much as he can for everyone and produces a consolidated budget.
Right. So the bottom line with this budget proposal to a lot of people is there is no county property tax hike to fund this budget. The rate stays at $3.39. Last year, at this time, the budget season was pretty turbulent. Mayor Harris proposed a $50 increase in the county wheel tax a year ago. The commission, after a lot of debate, passed a $25 increase for some specific capital projects, 2 new high schools in Cordova and Frazier, and the county's $350 million toward a rebuilding of the Regional 1 Health Campus in the medical district. It wasn't as much as the mayor wanted, but it was enough to get those 3 projects done over several fiscal years, though, correct?
Yes, that is correct. And that was a huge accomplishment and really shows the mayor's commitment to investing in Shelby County.
So a year later, the state's $350 million, the state's, I will emphasize, $350 million toward Regional 1 is not done, at least not yet. And on this podcast earlier this month, Mayor Harris said his plan now is to up the county's share to $500 million over 10 years and do the whole first phase of the rebuild and look for the state and possibly federal funding to join this effort at a later date. So tell me how the $500 million works and how that works, especially along with two new schools that the wheel tax and the wheel tax remaining where it is.
The additional wheel tax will support our debt service expenditures because that's a funding source that is utilized to pay those expenditures. So, for example, we currently have a debt capacity or a debt load, if you will, but every year we have to make debt payments. Just if you had a household credit card, you have to pay that down. So we actually make payments on our debt service expenditures. And so as our debt service expenditures get lower from those payments, we're able to add on new projects and new capacity there to fund these investments. I think the investment in Regional 1 could be catalytic to really seeing economic development across our entire county and region. So that's a very significant accomplishment, and I'm very proud to be working with the mayor and his administration right now, making these significant investments in our operations and our infrastructure and the like.
Right. And these are capital projects, construction projects. So some people may think of them. And these projects with these high dollar amounts, that dollar amount is not in one fiscal year. These projects are usually over maybe 4 or 5 years, and the debt service payments are over an even longer scale of 20, maybe even 30 years in some cases, right?
Correct, right. We historically have a 5-year capital improvement plan, but due to the significant need to invest in schools and our hospital infrastructure, we were able to develop a 10-year capital plan to spread that spending over 10 years in order to accomplish that goal of $500 million to Region 1, while also supporting the development and construction of 2 new schools.
Mm-hmm. Earlier this year, before the budget proposal was presented, the mayor talked about this in what's usually an annual retreat with county commissioners to kind of start the process of talking about ideas for how the budget might work. And one of the ideas he talked about was getting rid of vacant positions across the consolidated budget that have been on the books and unfilled for quite some time. Ultimately, that wound up being positions or jobs left unfilled for 18 months or more. The county commission, as we said at the top, has not approved the budget yet. But what is the impact of those vacant positions coming off the books if this budget plan is approved?
First, we have not gotten rid of any of those positions. We have repurposed the funding. So those positions still exist within our complement. The funding has just been repurposed to accomplish several things, to accomplish giving 6% pay raises to all of our employees, including law enforcement, making them some of the highest paid in the region. We were able to accomplish keeping the tax rate steady, which is very important right now as we see other inflationary pressures on our citizens. So these positions, as you mentioned, have been vacant for greater than 18 months. Some were never filled. So we took a hard look at these hundreds of positions and determined a way to repurpose that funding throughout our consolidated budget to really make this work. And this has been a huge undertaking, but really, I'm really proud of what we were able to accomplish in supporting our citizens, supporting law enforcement with 6% raises, while also maintaining a steady tax rate.
Mm-hmm. And to your point about these vacant positions still being there, if someone loses these positions in the next fiscal year, if they're not included in the budget, and all of a sudden, let's say the sheriff's department did manage to fill the 300 or so vacant positions that they have, which are still in the budget, which are 18 months or less. If they weren't able to fill those, there could be a budget amendment to include even more positions if they could actually fill those too, right?
That's exactly right. The sheriff is unlikely to fill the hundreds of vacant positions that still exist in the FY25 proposed budget. Matter of fact, to the tune of 300. There are 300 vacant positions worth about $22 million that are in the sheriff's FY25 budget proposal. And we are prepared to support any additional increases at the appropriate time. For example, if he has a historic hiring year, which we hope that he has, that's why we left many positions there for him to fill. All it would take is a simple budget amendment to fund that additional hiring. Because no positions have been cut from the budget, we can easily reallocate the funding to those positions, and he can hire immediately.
Okay, and let me ask you a question that I have gotten from my editors in writing stories about this specific part of the budget, and it probably is a question that occurs to a lot of people who, as we said at the top, don't work in the way that you do. So these positions are vacant. Explain how you can have funding in the budget for a position that has not been filled at that point.
So as with any office, we need to maintain the appropriate complement to be able to carry out, day-to-day operations. We actually have funded positions for people that are currently employed, of course, but also positions that can be filled to continue to support operations. That position comes with a budget, and that budget carries the appropriate fringe amounts. And it is there at any point that the department head or elected official would like to hire. This is normal and customary in any budget across any county and or city.
Right, because these division directors and countywide elected officials outside of the administration, they're not going to start on July 1 and say, okay, great, we've got this many positions, we're going to hire all of those immediately. It's going to be over the 12 months in the fiscal year, right?
And that is correct. And that is correct. And one of the key things we want to make sure that we point out is, in order to hire the best and the brightest to perform the duties that we do in Shelby County, we need to pay adequate wages. And so with the 6% raise that we have proposed countywide, this will ensure that the recruitment efforts can be successful to fill these vacant positions that currently exist.
Okay. You've heard Sheriff Floyd Bonner and his staff say that they do not think state law allows the county to cut his budget, and that question appears to have gone to the attorneys in the sheriff's department as well as in the county administration. What's your position, the administration's position on that?
That's a good question. And the sheriff's budget has actually increased in FY25. So you will see, the sheriff will see a $3 million increase in his budget. His budget also includes 6% increases for all of his staff, including law enforcement. So for anyone to say that the budget has been cut, that is not correct. His budget has actually increased from FY24 to FY25 to the tune of $3 million.
Okay. And as for the positions, as you outlined, are not cut, but the savings from not filling them it is a part of the equation here. And I've covered county government just long enough to remember when there were these things called salary petitions that the sheriff or some of the other countywide elected positions may take over to circuit court if they didn't get what they wanted in terms of personnel in the mayor's budget proposal. And I think that changed in 2008 with a charter amendment that sets up some kind of panel for arbitrating those kind of disputes. Are you familiar with that?
Somewhat, but I think the key is to understand that the FY25 proposed budget proposes more money for the sheriff than ever before. So those petitions, would not be necessary. There is funding, there adequate funding and vacant positions there for the sheriff to perform.
Okay. When these budget proposals are built, is it with the intention that there be enough wiggle room, let's say, for commissioners to maybe move a few things around in the very political process that is an element of budget season?
Yeah, the ability for the county commission to make amendments to the mayor's proposed budget is always there. Uh, that's something that takes a month. So he proposed his budget a few weeks ago, and we probably won't have an adopted budget until sometime in June. And during this month or so, that's when we make amendments to the mayor's proposed budget. So yes, there are many opportunities to make amendments to the budget.
Okay. We've been talking about some very big dollar figures that get thrown around during the course of a budget season. And to someone who encounters that for the first time, it can seem kind of nonchalant until you consider this is a budget well north of $1 billion. So talk about these discussions and trying to find a budget that works, and in the process discovering just how relative the dollar figures can be. I mean, $1 million sounds like a lot of money to everyone, I think, but when it's in the scheme of $1.6 billion, $1 million may be easier to do or to work with someone on, or to think about, in terms of funding something, than it is to just take in the whole budget as a whole, right?
What we try to accomplish as we set any budget is making sure we take care of the most important resource that we have, and that's our employees. And that's why we have proposed a 6% raise for all our employees countywide. So that's in the budget. Also in the budget is the ability for all of our departments and elected officials to hire additional staff if needed. This is very important as we continue to have more services that we have to provide to our citizens. So in this budget, that $1.6 billion is really aligned to ensure that we provide all the services that our citizens expect.
Okay. Last fiscal year, it was a 5% increase. Do you think that what the county government pays for jobs, do you think that has a larger impact in the private sector on what's a living wage, so to speak, for those jobs as well? Does what county government does on this specifically influence the private sector?
I think that the county government is a model and has to be a model for sufficient and adequate pay. And with the attention that we've taken to ensuring that our employees have, adequate pay with pay raises and also the best benefits around. And that's very important. And we try to lead in that respect. The government is just that. It's a government. It's not a private entity. So we do not have a profit motive. So therefore, we can support and encourage and reward our employees with adequate wages.
Mm-hmm. And at the same time, county government has to compete with the private sector for those employees too.
Correct.
Yeah.
As I mentioned before, we want to recruit the best and the brightest, and to retain the best and the brightest.
All right. A final point. You've been through these budget seasons more than a few times, looking at these numbers, watching the debate, answering numerous technical questions from county commissioners about what happens if we do this. What's kind of your opinion on the tenor of the discussions this year as compared to last year, which was a really turbulent budget season?
With the challenges that we faced going into the FY25 budget season, we were facing a $60 million gap. And that was caused by various things. That was caused by the expiration of our opera funding that we have used to support operations. That was caused by a significant increase to our retirement contribution that we have to do every year. So with that $60 million budget gap, it really took a tough, hard session to really come up with ways to maintain a tax rate, but also put really good things in the budget, such as 6% raises, and have the ability for our departments to continue to grow and hire and recruit. So, thankfully, we were able to make it through. it's a task that we do not take lightly, but one that I really love and enjoy being a part of this administration and working with the team here to support Shelby County citizens.
All right, that's where we will leave it. We have been talking with Shelby County Budget Director Michael Thompson. I'm Bill Drees, and this has been On the Record.